19.
Chapter 19. All right, well, let's go ahead and dive in. Everybody got your list finished?
Pretty close.
I think we did 19 yesterday.
No, we didn't do 20. 2019.
We didn't do any chapters yesterday because we just ended up working on our names
Oh.
list.
We did name storming,
Yes, we did
The one
name
19.
storming.
dollars and cents.
Mhm.
Okay.
That's
Dollars and cents.
Hmm.
Bart was a prominent athlete in college. He assumed he could exempt himself from the laborious process we must all go through in reaching full support. We brought this young leader and his wife on our staff and provided them with great support training. But Bart had other plans. He determined the hundreds of hours on the phone, traveling, and meeting face-to-face with supporters was unnecessary. He believed God was telling him to instead select his top 100 contacts across the state to approach. All in one single day, he sent off a letter to the entire 100, asking for the same monthly amount and including a self-addressed envelope to mail back their first check. Confident all the money would come rolling in just a matter of a few days, he sat back, prayed, and checked the mail. I begged him not to follow this plan. He proclaimed, "No, God has told me." I wanted to say, "No, he hasn't," but that would have been unspiritual. I got a knock on my office door about 3 months later. Normally supremely self-assured, Bart entered quiet and eyes downcast. He seemed to be a little more teachable as he revealed to me only 2 of the top 100 had even responded. Those 2 were simply one-time gifts. He was shocked and dejected. He was now ready for help. I exhorted him to go back to each of the 100 and set up individual face-to-face appointments. He tried, but he felt bad in light of the letter he had previously sent. Consequently, he never really put together a solid team. After financially limping along for 3 years, he and his disillusioned wife finally departed for a real job and paycheck. I was deeply saddened. If there was anyone who could have easily put his team together, it was Bart. Instead, he chose shortcuts and a one-size-fits-all approach. It doomed him. We can't afford to cut any corners in preparation. Failing to plan is planning to fail, is the wise old saying. So before you begin, commit your works to the Lord, and your plans will be established. Proverbs 16, verse 3.
Yeah.
By this stage of the process, you and your family, friends, and key supporters should have logged numerous days and weeks scouring over every fragment of your lives, every sliver of activity you've ever participated in, every place you've ever lived, worked, studied, played, and worshiped in your entire life. You can now humbly stand back with a sense of satisfaction, confident you have done a complete, exhaustive, and exhausting job of name storming. If so, you're off to a good start. Prioritize names. Now that you have this landslide of names gathered, how do you organize them? Who do you approach first, second, third? How are you supposed to know what to ask? The place to begin is to segment your huge list into high, medium, and low priority people. High priority. People you are fairly confident will want to partner with you. These are probably individuals with whom you have natural God-given connections. They care about you personally, or have a passion for your cause, or have been influenced by your organization in the past. Medium priority. These contacts are ones you are not sure will give. It's 50-50. They could go either way. If you pray, choose the personal route to approach them, do an excellent job of presenting and asking, God may impress them to join your team. Low priority. These contacts are people you're pretty sure won't want to give, but you're going to keep their name on the list anyway. You never know. You may get to 100% without approaching any from this list. A few of you, though, may be required to work through all 3 lists, as well as big batches of referrals before you hit full funding. Discern amounts to ask for. Determining a dollar amount or a range to ask for will not be a mystical experience where the figure appears next to each name as you make the call. Start with your high priority people and pray over each person. Ask God for wisdom. Consider putting together a list of factors that will come into play as you evaluate each person. Here are suggestions. Your relationship with them. This is huge. How well do you know them? How well do they know you? Their passion for your cause. How deeply do they feel about what you do? I knew of one young man who hated to raise support, but because he was planning to help orphans in Africa, he raised his support in record time. Everyone wanted to participate. Their past giving. Has this contact given substantially to you or some other person or group you know of? If so, this is an indicator of what they can or will give in the future. Their professions. You probably are not going to ask your hairdresser for as much as you do your orthopedic surgeon friend. For example, never ask an hourly waged worker for less than $75 a month, though. You can always come down lower, but never start at less than $75. Their lifestyles. This could be the most deceptive of all. They may live in a mansion and drive a Lexus, but they may also be deeply in debt.
Amen.
Their Christian maturity and understanding of giving. I am more likely to increase the amount I am asking someone to invest if they walk with Christ and have embraced the biblical concepts of giving. In other words, they view it as a vertical privilege instead of a horizontal duty. There may be other factors you want to include. Remember to repeat this process again with each of your medium priority people, and if need be, with your low priority. You may get to full support with your high and medium priority contacts. I pray so. If you need to raise $6,000 in monthly support, and if half of your face-to-face appointments result in new donors, what amounts will you need to be asking for? Average gift, $40 a month. Actual donors, 150. Number of face-to-face appointments, 300. Average gift, $50 a month. Actual donors, 120. Number of face-to-face appointments, 240. Average gift, $60 a month. Actual donors, 100. Number of face-to-face appointments, 200. Average gift, $75 a month. Actual donors, 80. Number of face-to-face appointments, 160. Average gift, $100 a month. Actual donors, 60. Number of face-to-face appointments, 120. Average gift, $125 a month. Actual donors, 48. Number of face-to-face appointments, 96. Average gift, $150 a month. Actual donors, 40. Number of face-to-face appointments, 80. Average gift, $200 a month. Actual donors, 30. Number of face-to-face appointments, 60. Note, if you want to be working on getting to full support for the rest of your life, just keep asking for small amounts. Never ask a professional or a double-income couple for less than $100 a month. You might be thinking, $100? You must be kidding. That's a lot of money. No one in my church or town can afford that. I beg to differ. You may be living a Spartan existence right now and know 58 ways to fix hot dogs, but open your eyes to current realities. I know the financial hand-wringers broadcast their dire economic forecasts on cable news each night, but let's admit it. Over the last 200 years, Americans have made more and given more than any group of people on earth, ever. I study annual charts of what different professions earn annually and how often they get pay raises. No matter what part of the U.S. you live in, certainly compared to the rest of the world, you have a lot of wealthy people all around you. Please don't attach what $100 may mean to you to the rest of the country. Common problems in asking. Telling yourself certain people can't or won't give. For instance, what about approaching recent college grads? You can't do that, can you? They just finished school. That is the exact time to ask them. Not only will they have cash for the first time in life, you will be helping them to establish their giving patterns. In fact, we have a young staff couple who approached a number of their friends still in college. I was astounded to learn how sacrificially these students gave. It made me realize that everyone is a candidate to join your support team. Asking everyone for the same amount. Bart, in the opening story, naively thought he could quickly raise his support by asking 100 people to each give $25. But people like to be treated individually. They appreciate you thinking and praying for them and customizing your ask. We must bathe this whole process and each potential ministry partner in prayer, seeking God's wisdom to ask at just the right level or range. Asking too low. Someone could look at your giving records and tell a lot about how you've gone about raising your support. Your financial printouts contain the facts. When I see numerous small gifts on someone's printout, I ask the Christian worker how much monthly support they asked for in each appointment. They usually bow their head and whisper, everyone for $50. Or they might confess, I didn't ask them for an amount at all. Oops. Bad move. I've observed support raisers usually get what they ask for. If you decide you're going to ask people for $50 a month, your average gift size for your whole team will be $40 or so. If you ask everyone for $100 a month, an average will be about $85 to $90. If you're asking for $150, the average is $130, and so on. Not asking at all. Potential donors are not mind readers. You have to give them some idea of what it is you are asking them to do. They watch a religious TV program where the speaker asks everyone for $19.95. They switch the channel and the next speaker wants you to send in a $500 seed gift. Only twice in the hundreds of support appointments I've had over the years did someone stop me before my specific ask and say, "Don't suggest an amount. Let us just pray about it and let you know." The rest greatly appreciated me giving them guidance on what I was requesting. I may notice one of our staff has a donor who gives sporadically, seeming to miss a month or two here and there. I gently ask the staffer, "Did you meet with this person face to face?" A little embarrassed, they usually admit they only called them or sent them a letter or email or had solicited them in a group setting. Almost without exception, a face-to-face individual appointment is going to yield a larger, more consistent, more lasting monthly commitment than choosing any alternatives. The occasional exception. Okay, what if the person you want to ask really does live at a distance, a long distance? You might be thinking, are you telling me I'm supposed to buy a plane ticket, rent a car, get a hotel room in a city 2,000 miles away in order to take my old high school teammate out for an appointment where he may or may not come on my team for $75 a month? No, probably not. We go into greater detail in this at the end of chapter 25, but if a friend of yours is so far removed from where you live or any of the cities where you are planning support trips, you might be wise to do your ask via letter or email. Then follow up with a phone or video call to answer questions, catch up on their life, and to get their decision. But if less than 90% of your total asks are not done face-to-face, I would guess you are probably cutting corners, taking the easy way out, or conjuring up excuses why you can't travel to meet with them in person. Occasionally, there is the individual living at a far distance who, if you will take the time and money to go see them, will come on your team for a very substantial amount. Years ago, my flying 2,000 miles to see a friend and share about our ministry communicated to him he and my message were very important. Consequently, he's become the largest financial stakeholder. I can assure you, he is not the kind of person who would have made that kind of commitment with just a phone call or email. Again, when making your support-raising decisions, always let vision pull your train, never the budget. It's hard work praying and thinking through every single person on your list as to when and how and what to ask for. Making the God ask means you are diligently seeking wisdom from him each step of the way. Always choose the most personal approach possible when inviting someone to join your team. The Lord will guide you to ask the right people for the right amount in the right way. I promise.
Thoughts on that chapter?
I actually read ahead, so I caught up now.
Okay.
Just caught me.
Yeah. Yep.
I was moved, kind of grieved when you shared the story about Bart. And that his disobedience or foolhardiness, however you want to categorize it, since wife could be disobedient.
Yeah.
That was the saddest part of it, because everybody's involved in the process. Which lean on your own understanding of this somewhere, and that's what the young man did. And that's just so sad. This is, please don't let me ever get happen.
Yeah.
Because somebody else got hurt.
Yeah, I think it's an example of what we talked about in the first day of class, of just the need for that humility, that teachability, played out in a support raising context And it kind of also goes back to what I had, why I was suggesting for you guys to wait as much as possible, to go through the process before you start, communicating with people, because that top 100 list, that probably would have been his top 100 people that he would meet with in person. But because he started, differently, he basically kind of pushed them to make a decision without, it's kind of like the proverb, about making a decision before you hear the matter.
Yeah.
Let me just pull that up real quick. I don't have that one memorized or anything. I'm not sure where that proverb is. Are you guys familiar with what I'm talking about?
What was yours?
It's a proverb about the foolishness of making a decision before you've heard the matter. I should probably look it up in King James. It's probably the translation I'm thinking of. Okay, here you go. Proverbs 18:13. If one gives an answer before he hears, it is his folly and shame.
Yeah.
Or to answer before listening, that is folly and shame. So that's kind of speaking to it from the other side, that it's foolish to make a decision before you hear, before you get the information that you need to make a wise decision. So it's almost like we could put our supporters in that place before we give them an opportunity to hear the matter. We're putting them in a position to make a decision about it. Now, of course, that's our bad, not theirs in this case, right? Because we're the ones who've, put them in that position. But it's just kind of the other side of the same coin of this proverb and how it relates to what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Same thing, like if they say, yes, I accept Jesus Christ in my life. And then you just like, well, hallelujah, you're saved, and you walk away,
Right.
that ain't good.
That's, good point.
Like your
Yeah,
salvation prayer, that ain't good.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yep.
Yeah.
Other thoughts on this chapter?
Well, for me, I'm traveling back east from the 25th, I think, to the 30th.
Of this month?
April.
Oh, okay.
April. I mentioned it to you.
Yes, I was just thinking, you said the 25th. I was like, wow, that's in 2 days. Sorry.
No, in April, and that's where my family is. They're all on the East Coast.
Okay.
So, I had other things in mind, but now hearing this, getting everything together and setting up appointments,
Yeah.
I'm going to try to do a group because we're already planning a fellowship. So, for those that I can't get individual, but they're all like right there. So if I can get them to meet with me. And then my daughter is going out there with me.
Okay.
So, and she has a very good history in sales. She's Holy Ghost filled, but professional wise.
Mhm.
So,
I love
and
this networking strategy.
I'm her number one. She calls my car the ministry mobile. So, I can see a lot of support there.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, set a day or two aside to speak and get some commitments there.
Really
be finished with the supporters of that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
definitely.
should be set up by then,
Yeah,
right?
we will need, we're hoping to be ready to go here in the next couple of weeks. So,
Wow.
that's my hope at least. I have high hopes, I guess. I don't know, but seriously,
I was hearing that too.
we're getting into our presentation next week, Lord willing. So hopefully we'll be ready to go in a couple of weeks.
You're right behind me.
I can put it either way.
Oh,
No. No, I'm good.
yeah.
But I picked up on something there that you shared, Joanne. I just want to affirm what you said, that yes, one-on-ones
Okay.
is going to be way better. I was trying to look up, he gave a statistic.
Because it keeps
Um,
it much more personal and caring and loving, and I can
Yes.
pray for that.
And in back in my psychology classes, I'm trying to think of the technical term. It was like diffusion of responsibility or something like that. So it's this psychological tendency, and the example is like, someone screaming for help in a crowd. And in some cases, nobody calls 911 because they always think someone else is going to do it. There's a whole crowd of people.
Yeah, it's like surely someone's gonna call.
Yeah, and so there's just this well-documented tendency that people have when you have a group and there's some kind of an appeal. It's like the responsibility, the weight of that need has a tendency to be diffused. So instead of so for our purposes, this is a one-on-one appointment. The ask is for you, as opposed to if I'm asking a group, then it's kind of like, well, hopefully some of the other
It's
people
like
will do it and I
throwing
won't have to do
something out there and see what
it.
I get.
Yeah.
Okay.
What sticks to the law,
So yeah.
And
Okay.
yeah, it's at one point he gave some statistics. I can't find it, but
Okay.
the statistics for one-on-one meetings was like around 50%. And I forget, but I think the statistics, he gave a statistic for people that, from this big research project that he mentioned, the statistics for people's responding to a group appeal was more like, was it around that?
Then the mail in was like 9.
Yeah, I was trying to find that, but anyways, it's in there. So yeah, it's like, so that's like less than half.
Mhm.
Cuts potentially, statistically potentially cuts your chances in half.
Yeah.
So that's,
Well, we don't want to do that.
no, we don't want to
so
do that.
I will make it very, very personal.
Okay. Now, the thing that could be an exception to that might be, let's say, your only opportunity to approach a new group of supporters is in a group setting. So for example, we talked about our supporters helping us to network and go beyond our personal sphere. So let's say you have a friend who's in a Bible study and they say, hey, why don't you come to the Bible study and share about your ministry? So and he's going to talk about this in our book, but what he basically says is use as an opportunity to just share a little bit. Don't give your full presentation, just give enough to kind of get that out there, and then ask people for a one-on-one appointment.
Yeah.
So use that as an opportunity to, set up appointments, but it's still it's a funnel for one-on-one appointments still, even in that sense.
Mhm.
But it's kind of like, this is my only opportunity to talk to this group. So yeah, in that case, you want to take advantage of it, but you still want to be strategic about it.
Yeah, I used to do Bible study on Monday mornings, so when time comes, I was thinking about doing that very thing, going back to the ladies, because they knew all about me coming down here and how I was gonna have to give up something in my life to do this. And the Bible study was one of those things that I felt, and they were all very supportive, so I might have to miss part of the day to
Sure.
do a presentation.
Well, So actually what we're gonna do, when we get close to that time, is we're gonna be significantly reducing our classroom hours during those several weeks. So after we get our training done, instead of being here noon to 5:30, we're gonna need to figure out a new schedule. Because the time that we would be spending in support raising, that's gonna be hours for you to go make appointments. Now, we'll probably want to do like a check-in at least once a week, encourage each other, share testimonies, ask questions, problems that maybe you're facing or whatever, but we're definitely not going to be spending this much time in the classroom. We're going to carve out that time for you to make those appointments. That being said, though, Robin, my encouragement to you, given that scenario that you just mentioned, I think that's a different case than what I was suggesting. So my guess is that you already have a personal relationship with each of the people in the Bible study. So I would encourage you to just directly ask them individually for a personal one-on-one appointment.
Because I was gonna ask the lady who facilitates it, what she thought would be the best way for me to go about that. It's, Mike Harrison,
Mhm.
it's his wife.
Okay.
So I was, she would give me a straight answer. She would.
Sure.
And then I was just gonna ask her how I should probably approach that when the time came, so.
Yeah.
And I trust her judgment and she would give.
How big of a Bible study are we talking here?
Eight ladies.
Okay.
So. And
So yeah, that's something to pray about. You could do the request for an appointment in the group if you talk to the facilitator and that seems appropriate. But if you have any kind of relationship where it would be okay, not too weird for you to approach them individually, or even if it is, it still might be the best
But
thing to
yeah.
approach them individually for that. Because even then, it's just the psychology of it can get weird. So even if you make your ask to the group, then in each of their minds, they're thinking, well, maybe one of the other ladies will do it. They might even sit through your presentation with you, but it can still have that potential effect. So something to pray about. But ideally, it's an individual request for an appointment and an individual appointment, face-to-face appointment to make that presentation. So that's the ideal. Yes, sir.
The other question I have is, with my situation not being a priority situation, say I only get 200 a month, because maybe I don't ask, because I only know 15 people anyway, I did the list yesterday. But that's not a big deal if this ministry that I'm doing Saturdays only costs me 30 a week, and I'm getting 200, it's not something that I'm not trying to make it like a big, huge priority, 800 every month or 1,000 every month, because I don't have the expenses,
I understand. However, you could always consider contributing to the general fund out of some of that. So that's up to you, but yeah, I would just pray and ask God for direction. So yeah, trust him to lead you to that. But I guess the one thing that is something to think about, if right now your goal, let's say, is 200, and you're saying, well, I got 15 people, and among all of those, I'm going to hopefully get 200. And so maybe you ask 4 people for $50. That's okay if that's what you feel led to do, but you might, because of what we've been talking about earlier about how we approach someone and that kind of precedent, I would encourage you to still pray about adapting this approach that we've been talking about, so that you're asking people for $50 at the least, but maybe more like 75 or 100. And maybe that means for now you meet with less of those people, but you still have other potential supporters that you could ask later on if things change for you, for your ministry, your expenses increase or whatever that might be. You just might not want to, I don't mean to say this in an over dramatic way, but it's kind of like burn the bridge. You don't want to interfere with some future potential for that supporter by kind of selling yourself short on the front end with a lower short-term goal. Because again, the idea is that this might be a long-term thing. Okay, yeah, you might only need $200 a month for now, but what might God have for you down the road? You want to just keep that in mind, or at least that would be my suggestion. So
I still have the original goal, I mean, but I'm kind of pessimistic about it in a little way, because I'm not a beggar of borrowed. And I don't.
And that's not what we're.
The people on my list don't generally have, this extra income.
Well, that's what he's talking about in here, that like, you'd be surprised what people are willing and able to contribute. And think about this. The widow with the 2 copper coins, right? Jesus didn't say, oh, we shouldn't receive an offering from her. So if you think about the context of what we've been talking about, that it's actually in those people's favor, it's in their best interest to help them, encourage them to invest into God's kingdom. So that widow, she invests everything. So that her blessing, her reward is proportional to that sacrifice, right? Whatever that is, who knows? That might be in heaven, but regardless, there's that proportional, right? Her gift was more, not because it was a higher dollar amount, but because it was a higher percentage. So I'm just saying that if you look at it from that perspective, it's not about even what your needs are, although it is important. I think it's good to consider the possibility that those needs or the needs of your ministry expenses might grow down the road. But even all that aside, even on a fixed income, it's in their best interest to invest into God's kingdom, even potentially sacrificially. And of course, as we've talked about, we're hopefully modeling what we're asking other people to do. So same for us. It's in our best interest to invest sacrificially into God's kingdom. And so I think part of it is we need to buy into that mindset ourselves. And if we will do that, that's going to help us to, meet with somebody with a straight face and seriously encourage them to do that. Because if I don't really buy into that and I'm not doing that, then I'm going to feel a little sheepish asking somebody else to do that. You see what I'm saying? So anyways, I'm just kind of flowing here what I feel like God's saying. But so yeah, Jason, I just want to encourage you to pray about it. And don't sell yourself short on the front end. You're not begging or borrowing. That's not what you're doing. You're giving people an opportunity to invest in God's kingdom.
Let me remind you of this, if I might. You've seen what homelessness is like. And you see how the homeless act. Sometimes they will give you their last slice of bread, bro, just to make sure that you're okay. If you're willing to risk it, I'm not going to be surprised when you come back and report this person had almost nothing that they were willing to do. And you've experienced that too, so just take that as advisement. You will be genuinely surprised. Take the risk. That's all.
What do you think, Adam? Any of that resonating with you?
What was that? Adam?
I'm sorry, Jason.
Yeah, like I said, my goal's still the same. I just, just giving the confidence to expect,
I heard God say that you need to pray. I heard God say that there's more people that he wants to bring to your mind if you just sit and ask them. So,
Yeah, I don't know why I called the other day I called Adam Jason. Now I just called you Adam.
It's okay, man.
Sorry about that.
he's cut.
Okay, let's see what else there might be to glean out of this chapter here real quick, then we'll,
I have a question.
yes, ma'am.
When we're doing our presentation, what are we gonna be doing in this ministry that they might have specific questions about? Or is that gonna be in our presentation? You're gonna prepare us for that? Or like, are we going to be, like, what are we doing together? Or are we doing more individual, what we've been doing, what we see ourselves doing? Or are we asking for funds to represent the group of us? This is the vision, this is the plan, so.
That's an extremely important question. Did you guys catch Joanne's question? So this is something that I've been thinking about a lot, especially since Saturday. I went and met with one of Dale, so Robin's husband, a supporter, and his kind of connection to the sending church that sent him. And yeah, it was just an eye-opening experience that kind of showed me that one of the things that I need to do and that we need to do is make sure we have a handle on just what you said. What is the ministry that God is calling us to, that we're doing, and that we're asking people to partner with us in?
Right.
Because I think it's hard for us to, we're going to need to spend some intentional time on that, because what we're not, the vision that we're inviting them to is not, hey, will you support me while I go to school?
Right.
This is just the beginning. And I kind of have spoken to this a couple times, but I'm recognizing that we need to kind of unpack this a little bit more. So I think last week or sometime recently, I said, think about this like a job that just has a really long training period. So like, I'm just thinking of, I worked at Walmart one time, and this was a long time ago. And I just remember like the first week, it seemed like I was just sitting there watching orientation videos. And that compared to most of my other jobs, most of my jobs were construction. You didn't have any training. You just said, here, pick up that board and do this with it. It's kind of like no training whatsoever. So it was just kind of weird for me at that time. I was like, man, I'm getting paid to watch videos. Like, it's kind of cool, but it's also kind of weird. So this job is kind of like that, but times 6 months. Okay. But ideally, if God wills, not only just by the end of the year, much less the next 3 to 5 years, hopefully, or more, the time that we're spending, with this much classroom time is going to pale in comparison to all the ministry hours that we're doing. So just to explain what I mean by that. So 2 things. One, the commitment for this program was 1 year, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the hope is that this could be, if God leads you to continue, a 3 to 5 year program. And that's based on a couple things, just looking at Jesus and his disciples, like they had a 3.5 year program, if we want to say it that way. Compare it to an apprenticeship with any other industry or company. Like, for example, in the electrical field, I was an electrical apprentice. Well, that's a 4-year thing. You have to have 4 years of full-time hours to qualify to take your journeyman's test. In other words, to be able to get your journeyman's license, you need to have 4 years of full-time hours, right? You know, the other thing that I think about is, let's say you're going to apply to a ministry position at a church. Unless it's an entry-level position on their job posting, they're going to be asking for candidates to have, on average, at least 5 years of experience. If it's a higher up position, it's going to be more than that. But if they're wanting to hire someone with experience, they're not just going to want somebody with 1 year of experience. Their ideal is going to be probably much more closer to that 5-year point. So if part of what this apprenticeship is doing is really equipping you not only with the discipleship foundation, which is what we've been talking about, but along with that, some real hands-on ministry experience that you can put on a resume or whatever. It's that more along the lines of that 3 to 5 year ballpark that's really going to, you know, seem substantial from that perspective. But put all that, go ahead.
How much do you have already prepared
For as far as programming,
for future?
I have about 3 months prepared.
Of this year, right?
Yes.
Oh, my goodness.
So we haven't even hashed out all the details of this year. So when I say God's been saying, take it one step at a time, that's what I'm doing. But he's also given some glimpses down the road. So the other part that I want to just throw out there is, I would love if every single one of us were still preaching the gospel and making disciples together as a ministry team 10 years from now, 20 years from now.
Amen.
You see what I'm saying? Now, if
I know
if that's what
teams
God's
like
leads you
that.
to, that's fine. If it's something else, that's great too. You know, I could still say, hey, you know, this person who's, I'm just being silly now, on TV, you know, they were in my class back in the day. Okay. So maybe that'll happen too. But regardless of all that, I think that your question is really important. So what is the ministry that God's called us to? Let's just brainstorm on this for a second. What would you guys say that is? How would you describe that? The ministry of Telos School of Discipleship. How at this point so far, how would you describe that?
What this is?
The ministry. So let's say right now you need to meet with a supporter. And so just going with whatever you have so far in your mind and in your heart, how would you explain that if you had a support meeting today? What the ministry is that you're called to do here in this school in this season? We'll go Jason and then Crystal.
I would say that we're a part of a team of Christ-centered individuals that are dedicated to loving God and loving people and sharing the love of Christ and bringing others to Christ, something along those lines.
Okay.
So I was thinking along the lines of, we're here learning how to be disciples for Christ, also learning how to evangelize and go out and help bring others to Christ, and also bringing them hopefully to this discipleship class.
Yeah. So I was actually a dream that I had this morning.
And let
Two
me-
things.
I have a big feeling that this class is gonna be huge. I just want you to know that.
Yeah,
It's
I
gonna
get the
be
same feeling.
Yeah.
So
I'm
did you
not-
just
I'm
say
not even
expand?
talking- Expand.
Did-
I'm talking about churches. I'm gonna be involved.
There you go. Look at this.
This is what I wrote down this morning. I just heard this, it was one of these words, expand. Where did it just go?
I saw it expand.
Okay, there it is. I wasn't sure if it was expand or expansion, but I heard that word in a dream. That was just the word.
And I keep hearing connection.
And so this is, I felt like it goes along with this other dream that I had. So I had a fun time nodding off with Jesus this morning. I dreamed of the apprentices. I was saying that the people they are talking to are welcome to get involved more. It was basically like, And the specific example was like Dale, actually, in his Bible studies, like this idea of him is like that Bible study is just a funnel to get people into full-time discipleship. And then whatever God leads each of you to do, it might be just a once a week kind of a ministry. It might just be a chance encounter on the street or whatever. But the vision, so one of the, I think the distinctions, because Jason, I like what you said, but I think when we talk to supporters, that might feel kind of vague. Like, well, yeah, isn't that just sort of the ministry of every church? And so why should I support you as opposed to, someone else? And hopefully the answer is because God's asking you to do that. And if he's not, then don't. But the other way to talk about this is like, we want to give them a little bit more of kind of like what's distinctive, what's unique about this ministry. And, if God's not leading them to support us, that's fine too. But we want to at least, like we said earlier, we want them to hear the matter. We want them to have some information to make this decision on. So what is that information? Well, the focus is evangelism and discipleship, right? But the distinction of discipleship, I think what makes the vision of discipleship that we have, I'm not saying we're the only ones, but I'm saying it is different from a lot of churches, is this idea of disciples or full-time students. It's the idea of that the church wasn't ever designed to be a group that met once a week. You look at the book of Acts, chapter 2, they're meeting daily, right?
Yeah.
So we're not even fulfilling that yet, right? And maybe one of these days we will, but I'm just saying, like, it's a little bit of a different vision for discipleship. So so this is kind of not just answering the question that we're talking about right now with support raising, but it's just a lens to see ministry through. Is I want to encourage you guys to buy into this vision of discipleship, not only how you do discipleship in your ministry, but the kind of disciple that you are. And then from there, the kind of disciples that you are strategically partnering with God to make, right? Disciples of Jesus, full-time students of Jesus, that have this little bit different idea of discipleship than many of the body of Christ in our nation and our culture in these days. So that's a huge part of it. The other part of it is that I'm just recognizing is kind of a downside to where we're at in the program and the need to do support raising based on how that fits with where we're at. So what I mean by that is, after we finish the discipleship class, the plan is to do a series of ministry classes. That is, the goal of that is not only to have an introduction to the different ministries of the body of Christ, but almost like a workshop that each one of us goes through a process to really seek God for whatever that increased focus is. It might be different for different ones. Like it's not going to be the first time I have this conversation with the Lord, like, what is it that you've called me to? But I'm hoping that as I engage that with you, that my calling is also much more defined. Maybe for some of us, this is like just the beginning of getting a handle on what am I called to? Am I called, what part of the body am I? Am I a hand? Am I the eyes? You know what I'm saying? So I'm just saying that the hope is that no matter where you're at on that spectrum, whether this is kind of one of the first building blocks of understanding your ministry and calling, or whether it's just increasing that focus, that laser focus, I'm hoping that there will be a growth in that area for all of us. But what I'm saying is that most of our support raising is probably going to be done before we get to that part of it, right? So that the downside to that is if you don't already have this vision that God has said, I've called you to, this specific ministry and these are your gifts. We'll want to at least have some kind of a handle on that going into those support raising appointments. So all of that to say, I don't know what that means, but I think it means that if you don't have at least an introductory idea of what it is that God has called you to, I just want to encourage you to start praying now and asking for him to give you those glimpses.
Yes.
And it might be like me, like one of the first dreams I remember having was just a guy in white robes who said, you are I'm not going to tell you what he said, but it was a specific ministry, role in the body of Christ. And I woke up and I was like, I didn't think I knew that. What is that even? And it's been years of like, what is this role supposed to be? So when all that to say, you might not even understand what God is saying to you when he starts to give you these glimpses of what he's called you to. But you'll want to start getting that information to kind of narrow your focus, zoom you in on what exactly that ministry is. And it's going to be important as much or as little of that as you might have is going to come into those support raising appointments. So hopefully that rant made sense. I don't know. Crystal, what you got?
Can I share something?
Sure.
Similar to what the dream you had, right after the brain surgery, I was doing a nap and I had a dream that God in his magnificent white self was like standing over there with his hands on his hip. And he's like, and I'm changing your name to Crystal Ann. And I woke up and I'm like, Crystal Ann?
Huh.
What? And so no more. So my name has not a very good meaning to it because my parents are both drug addicts. So when they named me Crystal Rhiannon, there was not a good, it was all bad motive behind that. So when I got that revelation, Crystal Ann, so it's no longer gonna be Rhiannon, I'm not gonna have no name. So Crystal Ann's one word, and it's gonna be Crystal Ann Connell or Crystal Ann whoever I marry. Yeah. Not amazing?
Do you feel like you understand the significance
I
of the new name?
Yes.
Okay, cool. You don't have to share that. I'm just,
I won't.
I would encourage you to search that out.
Last
So
question here. Before Saturday, can you give me some of those templates you have, like maybe 20?
the
Yeah,
gospel
we need
booklets.
some of that,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. I was bringing that up yesterday and then I totally forgot about that. So I guess one other thing that I just want to kind of say related to this whole discussion. So Telos does have a ministry focus and emphasis and a sort of an angle, although it is very broad. And God has a purpose and a ministry for each one of you. So I just want to say that part of the vision of Telos is related to the ministry that God has for each one of you. In other words, the idea is to take you guys and fit you into my ministry, right? Oh, well, I need someone who does this. Here, you do that. And you over here, you do this. But on the other hand, it's not just hey guys, do whatever you want. And hopefully it all works out and we all work together somehow. It's the combination. It's where these two things fit together of, the broad vision and scope and whatever those specific elements might be that God's given for Telos and how that plays out and fits into each one of your missions. So that part of it is a way for you guys to do the ministry that you're called to do through an organization that's, you know, helping to train, equip, but also help you to fund. Because I'll just say it's hard work starting up a whole ministry organization. And so it might be that, you know, God has a calling for you, and Telos is a vehicle to help you do what you do, connected to, you know, a body of Christ, but not necessarily, you know, within the school or whatever, who knows? So I'm just saying it's where those two things come together. So as you get ready to do your support, your presentation, you want to start having those two pieces. A way to describe the ministry of Telos, and at least whatever little hints or maybe very developed vision of ministry that God has for you. And so as much as you have on both of those, you're going to want to put into your presentation. Does that make sense?
One last question, and this will probably be something I have to get on my own later on down the road. Do you know those little shirt pocket size Bibles? They're like that.
Yeah, they're
New
bottom.
Testament.
Mhm.
How can I get some of those? Does the church have them?
Dollar Tree has them.
Dollar Tree does?
And
If the
Bible-
church, you may give you some, but Dollar Tree has them. They even have, you know, the bigger version for $1. It's very small
Okay.
print,
$1.25.
but okay. Oh, they're $1.20. I haven't been in them since they. They're expensive.
And there's probably going to be a much cheaper way, if not even way, to get donated Bibles.
Okay.
So that's a research project that you could be working on. You would want to contact, you know, pray about at least contacting publishers. I'm just getting the Gideon's organization is also an organization that you can contact. I just know that we've rarely ever bought Bibles at ODF. They're just, we just get donations and we work through them. So at one point we didn't have Bibles, and so one of the pastors reached out to, I forget who, but they got some Bibles donated. So
Donated from a friend of ours who her church had them, and they were like disbanding or something. And I don't know, it was a whole story, but it was a huge box of Bibles. And I just texted Dale, I said, do we have the small New Testament Bibles? And he says, yes.
Oh,
Well,
praise God.
I know we have like small ones. They're not quite the size that you're talking about, but they're maybe like the paperback like this. So that might be what he's talking about. There might be other ones that I'm not aware of. So I guess one question is, how set are you on the little ones,
Right.
or would just not like because I know we have other sizes that aren't quite that
Well,
small.
see, when I do this Saturday,
More
I've got family room flyers for the family. And I want to add that to with the Kingdom of God pamphlet you have,
Uh-huh.
and then also Bibles too.
Yeah. And that's the other thing I was going to say too. You could talk to Michael and see if they have any leads on
Okay.
Bible donations. But if you're set on the little tiny ones, Gideon's are the first ones that come to mind of, because they actually came by one time and were asking about that for us. So yeah, you could definitely look them up and reach out to them. Yep. But very likely that's something you could probably get a bulk supply for very cheap, or maybe even donated.
Right on.
So, okay. So, we're in this class right now. So, you know, once we get more established and we're doing what we need to do, we're set as far as the financial end of it. So, the people that, are in our area that do get saved, so do you see them getting set up in a class will open up with them, kind of like this is, our entry right now is like a 101. So bringing them in and even have classes over like a house of this, like a house of equipping disciples,
Yeah.
you know,
So those were the dreams that I
so
had.
different classes.
Was not this, like, this isn't the big
This is-
picture
this
vision
is
of
the
it.
beginning.
This is the beginning. And so, for example, one of the dreams was a high school in downtown Denver, and there was a bus. And so when I prayed about it, the Lord said, this is, you know, your discipleship school, and the bus is an evangelistic component of the school, ministry of the school. So I know that a huge part of it is going to be street ministry. In fact, if I could say this by faith, I believe God's even pointed out a specific storefront location
Mhm.
for the evangelistic center. And then another, not specific, but just kind of area, like a sort of a 2-block radius, where I think is what he said, where the school is going to be, both in downtown Denver. So yeah, I think there's going to be an evangelistic whole component. And then the idea is that as people are receiving the full seed and invited into a full-time version of discipleship, that there would be a school of discipleship where, you know, we would basically have classes, you know, starting frequently enough for people to be coming into right away. Yeah, so I think it's a lot, very much along the lines of what it sounds like you're describing.
So the school, once that's established and everything, it's a curriculum that we're going after. So is that gonna be like a closed, once it starts, closed until that curriculum's done, and then?
Well, that's what I'm talking about right now. So like, let's say they go, let's just say the curriculum that they go through is the same what we're doing with the discipleship class. So you don't want it to be where people have to wait, you know, 3 or 4 months for the next class. So that's what I was saying. We'll want to have it set up so where we have classes starting once a month, or maybe even, I don't know, who knows how big Jesus is going to do it, once a week. So that you don't have these people receiving Christ and they're just kind of hanging out, you know, ready for the enemy to use that lag time to get them back.
Right away.
Later on, you guys,
Mhm.
we can say, we were part of the first.
Like when
First
Pastor
class.
Andy was meeting in the coffee shop before this church was ever even
Yeah.
basically thought of, it just a few of them in a coffee shop.
Because here's some of the things I wrestle with and that have bothered me the past 8 years, trying to do discipleship the way our culture has done it, you know, this whole once a week model. And I've just seen so many people relapse, so many people fall out, you know, between our weekly sessions. And I just think about how did they do it in the Bible setting, right? So let's just say Paul, okay, he travels to a certain area. And so he doesn't meet with these people once a week. He devotes himself full time to, you know, discipling the people that are converted. So they're going through this intensive period of, like, you know, being established in the faith, in their relationship with Christ. And then he's setting up, you know, leaders to continue to shepherd them as he goes on to another place. But it's just that idea of like, we can't, this once a week thing just isn't working. It's not working for me and my spiritual growth, and it's definitely not working for new believers. You know what I'm saying? So it's those kinds of things that are driving, like, what does this look like in the modern context, and on a mass scale? Because I do believe there's a revival about to be poured out. And I remember a book that Amy and I read in our first week of ministry school, that ministry school that I mentioned, we went out to California. And it was a book about the Welsh revival. And a lot of it was just these awesome stories about, what God did. But the takeaway, because apparently, at least according to this author's perspective, he felt like it was very short-lived compared to what could have happened. And what he used the analogy was nets. He was like, they didn't have the discipleship framework to really make the most out of this outpouring of the Holy Spirit. And that kind of planted something inside me, like we need to be preparing nets to hold on to the fish that we catch.
Right.
And so I think that's what God's been doing this time for me and many others. I'm sure I'm not the only one, but it's like right now we're preparing that framework.
Right.
And I believe God has spoken about a wave of evangelism here, and I'm sure it's going to be other places as well. But this is, Denver, this is our current assignment, right? And so we're preparing for not only a time where I believe God's going to send us out to the streets. So I definitely think that's a huge part of what God has for us this year. As a group, maybe 2 by 2, or I don't know what it's going to look like. We'll cross that bridge when we get there, but street evangelism is definitely going to be a part of it. And then I think the more long-term version of the school comes out of a wave of evangelism that we experience on the streets as we go out. Or programs, or a family room, or who knows, all of the above.
Are we gonna get together or fellowship, just fellowship and break bread, pray, fast, or whatever?
Yeah, I would love to do that.
We should do a shut-in is nice.
Yeah, yeah, oh, I love those. We did those like about once every 4
A
months.
lot of stuff come out of them too.
What is that?
Like an all-night prayer meeting?
Like a fast and prayer, you can do a 24-hour shut-in, a weekend shut-in. And we're all just in a room, clear tables out the way. We're all just in the room, bring your stuff
Together.
if you wanna lay down and go to sleep, but yeah, we're in constant prayer, meeting people's.
No way.
Like a retreat.
No thing.
Yeah, it's like a retreat,
Like a girls'
and,
retreat.
I mean, there could be cots in the room or something like that, and we're spread out, we're praising them. They looking at me like I'm crazy. They're-
No,
Well, but it's-
Maybe have a women's and, I'd be cool with that, but,
Yeah, that's what kind of what I was
That-
thinking.
that's kinda
Women's
good
retreat,
too.
men's
That's
retreat.
good too.
Yeah.
You know, they have mixed,
It's just
it's
us,
the spirit of the
I do
Lord.
it
It's
in
all-
our-
For me, there's only so much.
Like a women's retreat. Or how far is that?
2 hours.
Oh, okay, so is, from Mount Princeton, you ever been there?